Hi, I'm John Fricke, and welcome to the monthly Wamego OZmuseum blog. If my calculations are correct, this is number 109 in a series. We started about 5 years ago, and the first 104 were written, and they're archived there on the site. But for the last 4 months, we've been doing video blogs, chance to have a one-way conversation, anyway, about things we love. And because 1939 is the year MGM's Wizard of Oz came out, and that's exactly 80 years ago, we've been talking about some aspects of what was going on at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer across the spring and summer of 1939. We talked about the editing of the film, the special effects, the underscoring, the sneak previews, but it was August 1939, now 80 years ago precisely, that the general public first got their chance to see The Wizard of Oz. There were some test engagements the second week in August in resort communities, about 14 of them around the Midwest and the East Coast. But the big premiere, naturally, was in Hollywood, and that was held on August 15th at Grauman's Chinese Theater, which is still there on Hollywood Boulevard. It's now the TLC Theater, but the decor is pretty much the same, and best of all, they haven't changed the forecourt. And if you know your Hollywood history or have seen any cement events, as they're called, the forecourt of Grauman's is where the stars put their fingerprints, handprints, and footprints and autographed in cement over the years when they reached a certain status. So this is where Wizard of Oz was premiered in 1939, and it was a throwback to what Hollywood premieres used to be in the late 20s and early 30s before the Depression took hold. These were huge gala black tie celebrity events. Well, they hadn't been doing as many of those given the financial situation across the country, but MGM decided that for Wizard of Oz they should pull out all the stops, and indeed they did. Tickets went on sale and were almost immediately sold out at $2.20 a ticket. One of the Munchkins, who was in the movie, now whether this is a publicity story or not, I don't know, but he supposedly called the box office at Grauman's and wanted one ticket, but he planned to sit in it with his girlfriend because they would both fit. Take that for what you will. But the place was jammed and sold out. MGM also erected bleachers on either side of the entrance to Grauman's and across the street, bleachers that accommodated 5,000 people. And those bleachers were filled by the afternoon of the evening of the premiere. It was quite an exciting event because in addition to the 5,000 seated people, there were another 3,000 or 4,000 around the theater, around the venue and across the street, on rooftops across the street, on buildings looking down, and the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, which is still there across the street. All the people were hanging out of their windows to see the big Wizard of Oz kickoff event. MGM sent their art department man, Elmer Sheely, over to Grauman's to recreate a special atmosphere for Oz, and he put in a yellow brick road, a celluloid cornfield with a stuffed scarecrow. They brought in a tin robotic kind of figure with which you could pose. There was an orchestra playing nothing but Oz songs, a live radio broadcast interviewing celebrities at the premiere. But Ozziest of all, and best of all, they had several of the little people, the Munchkins, on site who had been in the movie, who had filmed their part 8-9 months earlier, but they re-outfitted them in some of the costumes and they greeted the guests as they came in. The whole event was geared, of course, for publicity, and to get publicity you invited all the stars you could find. Well, MGM stars were there, stars from other studios were there with their children. This was a big event to have kids at an 8:30 at night Hollywood preview premiere, but they turned out. Wallace Beery with his daughter, Eddie Cantor with his daughter, plus people like Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Chico Marx of the Marx Brothers, Eleanor Powell, Benita Granville, Ann Rutherford, Polly Benedict of the Andy Hardy movies starring Mickey Rooney. The star who got the biggest ovation that night, though, was glamorous Hedy Lamarr, who was just making her mark in movies for MGM. Now, the Oz people were there too. Not all of them, but some of them. Bert Lahr, the Cowardly Lion, Ray Bolger, the Scarecrow, Billy Burke, the Good Witch, and the creative staff. Mervyn LeRoy, the producer, his associate Arthur Freed, Victor Fleming, the director. So there was much Ozzy anticipation and goodwill. Now, the biggest success, or the biggest focus that night, at least as far as the media was concerned, was on two people who were only tangentially Oz movie involved. One of them was Fred Stone, the classic vaudevillian circus performer who'd come to Broadway fame playing the Scarecrow in the original 1902 Oz stage musical. He was there along with the niece of his partner, David Montgomery. Montgomery had played the Tin Man but had passed away. But Stone was there, and he was greeted by Mrs. L. Frank Baum, the widow of the man who wrote The Wizard of Oz. Baum himself had died 20 years earlier, but Maud had been apprised of what was going on at MGM over the preceding 8 or 9 months. She'd posed with Judy Garland at the studio, and people said it was just heartwarming to see Fred Stone and Maud Baum together again and reminiscing about what went on at the Oz stage musical all those years before. Stone, by the way, you probably don't remember him from stage work, but he did do a dozen and a half actually, movies. Most noteworthy, he played Alice Adams with Katharine Hepburn. He played Hepburn's father. It's a great part for which he should have probably gotten an Academy Award. You can look for that on TCM. Maud Baum, the widow, was asked to speak over the radio, and she had a little card that had her statement on it so that she would be prepared. I want you to hear the brief statement she made. Quote, "One of the greatest thrills of my life will be to see the land of Oz, with all of its queer people that Mr. Baum created, come to life under the magic of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in their marvelous production of The Wizard of Oz." Now that's just good PR, but she was speaking from her heart, and she manifested those same thoughts in a letter to producer Mervyn LeRoy a few days after the premiere. He wrote back to her, and I want you to hear some of what he wrote to her. "Mrs. Baum, words fail me to tell you how happy your wonderful letter made me feel. Really, from the bottom of my heart, the picture's success is complete, knowing that you loved it as I do, and that you especially like Judy, and the Tin Man and the Lion and the Scarecrow as well. But most of all, as you stated it, we were able to retain Mr. Baum's, quote, kindly philosophy, close quote. And we in turn are grateful for Mr. Baum's wonderful and remarkable imagination, which made the picture possible." I don't think you can say it better than that. And however you have celebrated or will be celebrating the Oz 80th anniversary this month or for the rest of the year, when you do, please keep in mind the extraordinary people who made it happen, from pre-production to premiere, especially L. Frank Baum himself. Thanks for watching.